Coming up, going, not gone. Plus, you pay your taxes on time. Do you care if your elected officials are late paying theirs? Why that issue is exploding in Kansas City this week. Kansas lawmakers return to Topeka to finish what they failed to do all year, close a massive budget hole. Are you now about to feel the pain? And a party to celebrate Kansas City's first streetcar stop. A project update straight ahead. Hello, I'm Nick Haynes. Those stories and more coming up on the program that goes beyond the soundbite and takes you behind the headlines, making news in Kansas City. Dissecting those news stories this week from the Kansas City Star, City Hall reporter Lynn Horsley. From The Pitch, Steve Vokrot. From the editorial pages of the Kansas City Star, Yael Abelhalke. And Star political reporter, columnist and blogger Dave Helling? Oh,
indeed.
Yes. Well, we record this program on a Friday morning. Later this afternoon, there is a court hearing on whether Kansas City Mayor Sly James should be removed from the mayoral election ballot for failing to pay his taxes on time, a condition of candidacy. A complaint was filed against the mayor 2 weeks ago by transit activist Clay Chastain, who recently came in third in a three-way primary race with the mayor. But this week, the Kansas City Star reports late payment of personal property taxes isn't only a problem for the mayor. Half of the 22 candidates seeking to win seats on the Kansas City, Missouri City Council didn't pay their taxes on time, or their spouses didn't. Let's start, though, with the legal hearing against the mayor. Is there any evidence to suggest that James could be disqualified from the ballot, Lynn?
Well, not if you believe his attorney, Pat McInerney. I mean, he feels that Clay, number one, doesn't have standing to even bring this lawsuit. And the mayor is current with his taxes. He did pay his taxes, and when he signed an affidavit attesting to the fact that he was paid up, he was paid up. It's just that a tax came due after that, and there was a lag time between when he paid it and when he was certified for the ballot.
Now, we have heard stories about, oh, wow, some civic leaders are so concerned about this, so alarmed that they're trying to hold write-in campaigns to get some well-known political names to bring themselves forward, Yael, as write-in candidates.
Well, that's because can you imagine an election between Vincent Lee and Clay Chastain to be the next mayor? I mean, that would really be the height of just futility and folly in Kansas City. If it really got to that, I do agree with Lynn. I do not think his name will be scratched from the ballot, and should not be. I think he made a horrible mistake, and I'm just outraged at the excuses he puts forward. I'm busy. Well, we're all busy. Pay your tax on time. But I do not think we'll get to the write-in thing. If we do, it's going to be a short name. Jim Glover, Cindy Serco, somebody like that. But we're not going to get there.
Well, but also you can't have a write-in candidate in the general election. That's what
why not?
Well, that's what the primary is for. The election authorities are not planning to take nominations for write-in candidates in this general election.
Steve.
Well, a couple of new developments in the lawsuit, or the hearing that's going to be this afternoon. Vincent Lee has joined the lawsuit. He did that yesterday. Clay Chastain's retained an attorney, so that may solve the standing issue, but in the argument that they wrote, they cite laws that were repealed last year that deal with this tax delinquency. The current law is that candidates have 30 days when they're put on notice to get square with their taxes, which James did a while ago. I posted a story also this morning about Chastain. He acknowledged to me yesterday that he has not paid his earnings taxes that were due on April 15th. He has no intention of paying them unless he somehow gets on the ballot. He says he no longer considers himself a resident if he's not on the ballot. So Chastain sort of treats taxes like, in his residency, like it's an on and off switch. And while he's trying to get James off for his tax issue, he has his own tax issue right now.
But we have half, in Lynn Horsley's story, though, Dave Helling, half of the candidates running for city council in this general election coming up in June haven't paid their taxes on time, or their spouses haven't.
Right. They've had problems in the past. And Lynn documented that quite well in her piece. Part of that, Nick, is because Kansas City politicians have grown accustomed to having people do things for them. They all have personal aides, do a lot of personal things, and they just let it slip. There's no excuse for it at all, but it explains in some ways why this phenomenon takes place, and it takes place from the mayor's office on down. And the other reason, though, Nick, is voters never punish candidates for it. I mean, Emanuel Cleaver was $35,000 in arrears on the car wash when he first filed to run for Congress and won overwhelmingly. Voters in Kansas City, for whatever reason, seem to accept that sometimes tax bills are just paid a little bit
Do they
tardy.
accept that, Yale?
Well, I think Dave's right that you might not get punished at the polls, but I do think it reduces your credibility. I mean, that's the part that really galled me about the mayor, who's asked for higher taxes, getting ready to ask for another higher tax probably in his next term. Pay your taxes on time, and it's not that difficult. I mean, we all live. I think we all live in counties where you get notices of it. You're going to do it. I mean, as a journalist, I try to pay my taxes on time just because I know somebody's going to come point fingers at me. Well, they're politicians elected with tax dollars, spending tax dollars. So again, I think people do take it differently. I take it as very personal. I mean, it's very
But writing that
serious.
story, Lynn Horsley, couldn't have made you particularly popular, though, by exposing that problem with so many candidates.
Well,
this
that's
week.
true. And I will say not all of them were late this year. In fact, some of them paid on time this year because they knew they were running for office. Some of them had delinquencies or they were late in previous years. The records on the county website go back a couple of years. Also, personal property taxes are the one thing you kind of have to take the initiative to do on your own. Residential taxes are generally paid by a mortgage company. You have an accountant do your income taxes. So this is the thing where they need to take personal accountability. Some of them took that responsibility and said, yeah, this is on me, I apologize. And others said, well, why aren't you focusing on all the good things I've done? So yes, there's a little sensitivity to that
Can I
issue.
just repeat my concern that I've written about in the past, Nick, that Kansas City and lots of municipalities and the state, for that matter, have illegal requirements to run for office, but no efficient way of enforcing those requirements whatsoever. No screening, no checking of the record, residency remains an issue. It would behoove Kansas City and the state and to set up some sort of mechanism so that this fundamental stuff can be checked so that we don't have to go through this mess.
Yeah.
I'm just hoping that actually Dave's prediction might not come true and somebody is punished. And I'm not sure exactly who it's going to be, but there are a number of candidates who did not pay on time, and I think that thumbs their nose at the system. I don't like that.
But you think punished in a sense from the voters because nobody else is going to punish them?
Either they won't win as big as they thought they were going to, or they actually might lose.
Okay.
But we'll take a look at that.
Well, after a long break, Kansas lawmakers returned to Topeka this week to complete their legislative session. But the biggest issue that stared them in the face when they arrived in January is still the big issue that stares them in the face now, only the problem has gotten bigger, and that's the size of the budget hole. Last week, officials released updated figures that put the total gap between revenue and expenses next year at about $800 million. Governor Brownback has proposed measures that would knock out about $400 million of that. But more conservative lawmakers haven't been thrilled by his ideas, including raising cigarette and alcohol taxes. But when you have one party controlling the governor's office, the House, and the Senate in Kansas, what's the holdup, Steve?
Well, the holdup is that even some of the champions of the income tax cuts from 2012 are starting to have a little bit of buyer's remorse because there's a recognition that government costs money. And to cut so many of the taxes on a short scale was kind of a shock to the system. Even when the earnings tax measure in Kansas City, Missouri was being considered for repeal, it would have stair-stepped it out over a period, I think it was 10 years.
Yeah.
And so that would have given Kansas City, Missouri a bit of time to adjust. Kansas, the state of Kansas, has not had that time to adjust. And there are scheduled decreases in other income tax rates for the coming year. So there's a real difficulty about, how do we handle this? Do we need to re-examine what we have done?
Yes. Yeah. I think there is, I'm working on a weekend story that takes a look at some of the different options that Kansas has for raising revenue, sales tax, gasoline tax, cigarette, tobacco, other places they can find money if they raise the property tax. That's also on the table. But I do think, talking to legislators, there is a fundamental recognition now, Nick, that their problem is structural. It isn't just that they had a shortfall in 1 year or that somehow they came up a little bit short of the money they need, that they have now baked into the system a perpetual deficit that they have to figure out some way to rectify, because that $800 million deficit this year is another $800 million next year and every year after that. And so that suggests that there will be an effort in May to take a look at some of the effects of the income tax cuts, maybe not rates, but close some loopholes, perhaps tax small businesses in ways that they're not being taxed.
Can they go home without filling this hole?
No, they have to budget the balance their budget. Yes.
But they can't be there forever, Yale. So they have to do this pretty swiftly. They're not going to be there until August, September, October.
Well, they might be. They were there until June a couple years ago when they had an original problem, because I remember having to cover that. And Barb Shelley went on vacation. But one of the things that is just, it's so enjoyable to watch this as a critic of Sam Brownback. And as a former Kansan, I'm sad to watch it. But as a critic, it's like you knew all this was going to happen. They kept saying it wasn't going to happen. And now you have all these conservative Republicans, you know, Ray Merrick and Johnson County. Well, we can cut our way to the no, you can't. And then you have people, Jim Denning, proposing not one, not two, 7 different tax increases to try to make up for this one income tax, major income tax cut they did. Cigarette tax and the liquor tax and the sales tax, all these different taxes. I do think the one I think Dave mentioned was the repeal of part of the income tax. That's about a $200 million thing. That would be great. And yet there's this whole big industry out there saying, you can't do that. Well, we're used to that tax break. Already they're used to it. They can't prove, they mentioned this yesterday, they cannot prove they've actually created any jobs with the tax break. And that's the thing that really drives home the point. It's not solving the problem.
All righty. Well, before you say what on earth is going on, I want to draw your attention to this release from the governor's office this week. While those on the left dominate discussion with claims that the Kansas economy is weak, that our tax policy is unfair, and that Kansas is losing jobs, the reality is those claims are emotional, incendiary, and largely false. Here is the economic truth. Between January 2011 and February of this year, Kansas added almost 75,000 private sector jobs. We've got one of the highest employment to population ratios in America, and we're approaching historically low unemployment rates, which can help low-income workers find a way out of poverty at record rates. If we were doing our truth checking like you used to do on commercial TV, Dave Helling, and we're truth checking this as an ad, how would you be rating this?
D.
Okay.
Maybe lower than that, because they pick a specific time frame that shows the job growth in the best possible light. They don't talk about job growth from 2013 on, when the tax cuts went into effect. More broadly, the growth in jobs in Kansas roughly mirrors the growth in jobs in other states around the country. In some ways, it even lags behind them for high growth states. And yesterday there was testimony from the legislative research people in Kansas who said, in essence, we have no way of knowing whether these tax cuts have brought any jobs to Kansas. So here's the final thought, Nick. If the tax cuts were doing what Sam Brown had said they would do, you would not have the deficit you now have. Forget the numbers, CES, Labor Department. The whole promise was, we'll cut taxes, but we won't have to cut spending because our economy will grow. The fact that Kansas has an $800 million deficit proves that the tax cuts have not done what they were supposed to.
Yeah.
And I think as I recall, one of the figures, even at the time, was we're going to have to create 400,000 jobs to actually make up for the tax cut. And 75,000, that's just in an isolation. Well, okay, well, what did Colorado do? What did Missouri do? And as Dave mentioned, actually, and I've done a lot of research on this, Dave has too, many states are gaining faster than Kansas. So the tax cuts are not the homing beam of come home and have a job in Kansas.
And you were looking at some objective data this week from the U.S. Census Bureau, Steve.
Right, and the census had a report out that among states that were losing revenue, Kansas was among the top 3. I believe it was Delaware and Alaska were the 2 that were ahead of Kansas. And some of the feedback I get on that is, well, you can't look at a state budget and equate that to the economic health of an entire state. But yeah, actually you can, for reasons that Dave has already spelled out.
And they're borrowing money for the pensions. They're taking money away from the highways. I mean, they're cutting school funding overall. I mean, it's a disaster.
It's a bunch of Band-Aids is what is being done.
We go back over to the other side of state line right now. The first streetcar station is up. Now all Kansas City needs is the streetcars themselves. While area residents got their first chance to see what waiting for a streetcar would look like at an unveiling ceremony for the first stop, it's still going to be a long time before they get to ride. When is that slated to be, Lynn?
I think early next year. The cars will be here this fall, but there's a long training time when they have to work out the bugs, and they have hours and hours that they have to ride these cars around with no passengers on them. So early next year.
Now, Mayor James was there and boasting about the $1 billion in new investment within blocks of the streetcar. That's billion with a B, by the way, he said. Has that come about because of the streetcar line, Steve?
Well, there have been a lot of studies and claims about this, and some of the studies are more, shall we say, accurate or rigorous than others. So he brings up this list, and he's brought it up a number of times about, there's been 45 projects that have been started downtown since the streetcar, I think, started construction, and about half of them have not received incentives. But if you really look at the list, some of it's cherry picking. I mean, some of the things like Jimmy John's drive-through restaurant on Broadway are not the types of things that would ordinarily qualify for any incentives. And some of the other projects that ordinarily require incentives continue to require incentives, like some of the hotel projects that are coming in downtown. So, you could probably pick any part of town and pick any type of project and sort of cherry pick these same sorts of projects and make the same claim.
But to see it, though, coming into place right now, it's hard to not get excited, though, to see it, really becoming a reality, Yale.
I do agree. And Steve and I are probably two of the biggest critics of all these incentive deals and everything out there. But I would say that I think having the streetcar come has brought the level of excitement. I think it really has helped spur some of the redevelopment of the buildings into having people say, I'm going to live downtown. I have 2 young children living in town. They're both kind of intrigued by that idea. They never would have thought of living downtown. Downtown's population tripled since 2000, and that's the big downtown. So all that is good. Now, it was tripling before the streetcar, so the streetcar is not the panacea. One other thing, I was walking along Main just the other day from 20th up to about 17th, and there are several buildings in there like, wait, nothing happening on Main. Right here, the streetcar's right outside their door, and these are rundown buildings. What's going on with them? You would think those things would be lickety-splitty being redeveloped right now. So we'll see if that happens.
Dave.
You asked Len when it would be ready. I think there is something in the ordinance that requires Main to be torn up 10,000 times before they actually open the streetcar, and we're about 5,000 times short, so it'll take a few more disruptions of traffic and detours and blockades before it gets going. But I do think that there is some sense, to be serious for a moment, there is some sense that the beginning of the streetcar will provide some excitement, a bit of a boost. The bigger question for me, Nick, has always been maintenance, ongoing improvements. It's going to cost some money to keep the line going. They're not going to charge passengers a dime to ride it. And so, like a lot of things that happen in Kansas City, come talk to me in 5 years. We'll see then whether the streetcar, A, has been a success in terms of development, and B, whether it's a growing concern, or whether, like the Power and Light District, for example, they have to go back to the general fund.
But when you look at what happened in St. Louis with their Metrolink system, people were very nervous about having it in their area. They didn't want it. And when they saw it as a success, everybody then wanted it in their neighborhoods.
But Metrolink is different from the streetcar, and there are subsidies for Metrolink as there are for every light rail system in the country. So, again, I think the jury will be out for some time before we can call this a success.
All righty. Going, not gone. A week after the Vatican accepts the resignation of Kansas City Roman Catholic Bishop Robert Finn, there's news that the head of the Missouri side diocese may not be gone after all. Despite stepping down, Bishop Finn is scheduled to preside at 2 ordinations here next month. Archbishop Joseph Norman of Kansas City, Kansas, who is temporarily overseeing the district, says he asked Finn to oversee the ordinations after realizing that the Kansas and Missouri diocese had scheduled ordinations on the same day. So he is still a bishop and is still here.
Well, I wrote a piece about this week and used the word repulsive, which apparently got the Catholic League upset. So I've received dozens, actually hundreds of emails from people, Christians, very concerned with me using very bad language. With that said, that's what I think is just the tone deafness of this decision. If you're going to step down, well, don't step down until after the ordination. I mean, that's like #1 public relations. The second thing is, I think, and I've gotten a number of feedbacks on the positive side responding to the piece, which is, you're right, this just twists the knife. I mean, here's a guy who finally resigned. Everybody thinks, oh, this chapter, this sordid chapter in the Catholic history in Kansas City is over. He can leave, not do anything official anymore, and yet he will be. Basically, he's trained the next generation, and he will anoint the next generation. That does not look good, I think, especially to non-Catholics.
Steve.
Well, and to follow up on that a little bit, I mean, if you recall, Baumann was he's a strident supporter of Bishop Finn. He wrote something in the Catholic Key a year or two ago that was very critical of some of the media coverage of Bishop Finn, and so, you know, the new boss isn't a whole lot different from the old boss in some respects.
By the way, Archbishop Norman appeared as a Ruckus Newsmaker guest this week.
Unfortunately, I think there's some polarization in the community right now, in the Catholic community, and what I hope to do is to bring people together, to unify. In some cases, I think there's real need for healing, so we hope that maybe we can facilitate that.
You can see that whole interview during the rebroadcast of Ruckus Sunday morning at 11:30. But the Catholic League has been sending out a lot of press releases, of course, this week, including, you know, giving rebuttals to your column. But one of the things they talked about in terms of the positive nature of Bishop Finn was his extraordinary ability to bring new people to the priesthood, which has obviously been a major problem in the Catholic Church. 9 ordinations this year and at least 50 new seminarians next year. So certainly Bishop Finn has his supporters.
He does, and he's had them for years, and that's why it took so long for him, I think, to resign. But, you know, it really bugs me, and Finn did the same thing too. Let's heal, let's heal. Well, it's always on somebody else to do the healing. That's what's kind of driven me crazy in this whole last thing is they could help a lot with the healing. He could have resigned a year ago, and then that whole diocese could have healed better, and yet and all of his supporters could have said, all right, well, he's gone, but let's see the next bishop. He might be really good. And yet he had this hatred on the other side of Finn, which is too bad, but the hatred. So there was no healing going on. And now they have a chance for healing because he's stepping down, and they just continue it on. And I do think you're right. The Catholic League did point that out, which is, okay, that's great. That is a part of his job. But he had a whole other part of his job, in my opinion, he failed dramatically at.
Okay, watch for that Norman interview. Ruckus Sunday morning rebroadcast at 11:30, just 1 week after Kansas City was boasting of a groundbreaking compromise on ride booking services. Lyft, one of the nation's biggest ride booking companies, says thanks but no thanks to Kansas City. It says the newly negotiated rules designed to balance public safety with the new flexible technology market are too onerous on the company. So this wasn't the deal to end all deals after all, then, Lynn?
Well, this was a weird situation. For a long time, it looked like Lyft was negotiating well with the city and Uber was at war with the city. And in the end, Uber made peace with the city. And I think by that point, Lyft decided Kansas City may not be big enough for 2 major ride-sharing companies. So, and Lyft has really been out of the market since October, while Uber stayed in and kind of fought its way to a compromise. So they have the drivers locked up, they have a lot of the passengers. It may have been that Lyft just made a market decision. They were not very specific with their statement. They just said, we think these regulations are still too onerous. I don't know what the reason was.
Many of us, though, at this point have sort of ride booking fatigue, Yale.
Well, I mean, I will say there was a story yesterday about internal documents at Lyft showing that this cost them hundreds of millions of dollars to do all this stuff. And so I think Lynn's absolutely right. A market decision was, we come here, we're just going to lose money. I mean, Yellow Cab is still very powerful. Uber's got all the name recognition. Why go here?
Well, and the other thing is that the demand for taxi service is not as high in Kansas City as it is in other places. And so it's quite possible that 3 livery services are perhaps 1, maybe 2 too many. We'll see going forward.
And if some people thought, well, why are they spending so much time on this? Well, it's also been a huge topic in our state legislatures. In Kansas, Governor Brownback vetoes one of the few bills approved this session that actually had the support of Democrats, of moderate Republicans and conservatives that would have imposed tighter restrictions on companies like Uber. So what does Governor Sam Brownback see that almost every member of the Kansas legislature does not?
Well, he sees that Uber's lobbyist is his former campaign
chairman.
And so there was obviously some discussions that went on behind the scenes that may have informed his decision in this regard. You know, I do think that in general, there's a philosophic belief by the Brownback administration that the less regulations, the better. And so he can sort of define, but I do believe that there may have been some influence used to get that veto from the governor.
Is that the reason here?
I think what he stated was jobs. We need the jobs in Kansas. Well, he sure does need the jobs in Kansas. And I think that it is interesting Dave brings up the regulation aspect of it, which, yes, Republicans, oh, we don't want regulation. And yet in this case, they imposed it because they got mad at Uber. Uber is this group that has a very bad reputation with politicians of trying to pressure them into doing things. They tried it in Kansas City. They succeeded to a degree in Kansas City. But in the end, I think they're going to win in Kansas. I think it's going to go ahead there. And it looks like in Missouri, though, we're going to have a good local ordinance that takes effect.
Well, I was going to say there was a similar effort in the Missouri legislature. They were going to try to clamp down on cities and say, no, you can't. You can only do the regulations that we say you can. I believe they've backed off. The Senate president this week said, well, maybe we'll just let it work out with the cities.
Because Kansas City did a good job, don't you think?
Yeah, they really did, I think, find a balance between acknowledging this new type of technology. They want to be innovative and entrepreneurial, but also recognizing that you have to check the background. You have to do background checks on the drivers.
Speaking of getting involved in city business, that's the lawmakers doing that. The Missouri House passes a bill this week that would put a public vote red light cameras just before courts blocked their use in Missouri. Kansas City was making a hefty income off the automated cameras. Under the House bill, you would be asked on the statewide ballot box in 2016 whether Missouri should ban automated traffic enforcement. Now, if that was indeed the language on the ballot, wouldn't most people vote yes, Dave?
Well, you could imagine that the people behind the red light industry, camera industry, would spend lots of money to try and convince voters of their point of view. But I don't get the sense, I may be dead wrong, that this is going to get past the Senate in Missouri and probably won't go on the ballot. I may be wrong. We'll see.
Interesting. I think we're still waiting for a Missouri Supreme Court ruling on whether they think these camera programs are legal or not. We thought they might rule this Tuesday. Their next date is May 12th, so we might have more legal clarity in the coming weeks.
How much was the city bringing in, though, from those cameras?
They were bringing in millions. Part of it, a good portion of it, did go to the vendor, the camera company. I think they were getting like $1.3 million in revenues. Now, they've made up some of that with issuing other kinds of tickets.
Yes.
And
one of the things was they had to raise the tax on shaving supplies, which is why Dave Helling is now sporting a beard. That is our Week in Review. Our thanks to our news reviewers. I'm Nick Haynes from all of us here at KCPT. Thanks for spending part of your weekend with us.